Hello everyone, welcome to our week 4, which will be composition. We'll be talking about many topics around compositing a good picture. We'll talk about main elements of composition. We'll look at some good examples of it, like movie keyframes and paintings. And later on, I'll do a little demo for you, focusing composition. Before starting really to talk much further about composition, I want to take a look back into our week 3, which was perspective, when we covered a lot of elements around building your perspective grids, identifying your vanishing points, finding your horizon, scaling objects in space, sketching a prop. Hope that you have the time to cover some of those elements. To be honest, I'll be talking much more about perspective even on our Q&As while giving you feedback. This is not going to be the only time discussing perspective for sure. It is a really large elements to cover, but with exercises and studying it, you really get better at it faster. Even sketching quickly on paper some objects, you will be feeling much more confident about sketching in perspective. It's a really great tool to use in your paintings. I really find it as a tool because it really can enhance even composition. We will have a talk even here in composition about using perspective in it, and I think I have gathered really cool examples for you. Before going much further into a talk about composition, really I would like to open up a video for you with one of the probably the best directors doing examples is in mostly every frame of his work, emphasizing on composition, emphasizing on movement in composition. Um, let's see just for a minute the beautiful paintings. They're almost like paintings, but they are movie keyframes. Of course, you can really look at his work, Akira Kurosawa. This is from a video which I got from YouTube, a really cool channel to look at actually. It's every frame a painting. The guy over it makes a really nice podcasts about composition and all sorts of elements in in the structure of an image. Let's take a look for a minute here and how we can look and study composition. Uh, Even taking a still frame like this, you can really make a study of it or repaint it. Look at the main elements. Look at how lighting is composited, how elements are arranged throughout the canvas or the frame. To look for materials, to look for the patterns, for the contrast of the elements in the composition. Really great examples. So once that we got a bit hyped from looking those really cool frames here, I think that we can move on further and see what actually are those elements of composition that I'm speaking of. I have made a little board here, but we'll come here in a bit. So let me open up Photoshop real quick and open the file that I have prepped for this video. So I have put all those elements in a couple of groups. I am not inventing them. You can look them over even in YouTube with a simple search. You can see elements of composition, what they are actually. The info is all up over the web, and I have just put kind of the same pattern here, but more of a it's a bit different from what we saw over this website. But let's take a look at what we are going to speak as main groups of composition elements. For sure, we are going to speak about balance in picture, about contrast, about movement in a frame, about patterns, about scale or proportion. We speak about unity. So let's jump to the mood board that I've gathered with all those elements and really see the examples that I have prepped here. We'll start with balance and rhythm, and from what we see here, we have frames really opposite to each other in terms of balance, in terms of rhythm, in terms of composition. They are surely all sending some sort of a message to the viewer, but they really emphasize on balance and rhythm in a picture. You can really see how everything is ordered well here. We have repetitive elements over the wall. Everything is speaking of rhythm and order. Rhythm could be really much more chaotic, but in this way we have really everything tied up, stacked together. The colors are really in a balance, except the focal point, which is with this screamingly saturated purple, but still we can see how well it pops in the frame. What we have here, we have such symmetrical elements like this one, both speaking of balance, rhythm and unity, even that we have such a strong symmetrical feeling into the artwork. We can clearly see how they used one point perspective and emphasized on the balance and the composition here. All those parallel lines that we talked about in week 3 are really visible here, and now with this background you can really notice those stuff and stack them into some order. Next we go to unbalanced frame, which is really uncomfy to look actually, because it's something really is clearly off of it, but it's on purpose. It's on sending a message. Really the frame feels empty from this side, as a lot of negative space opens up, but they probably had this thought over, and this was the right way to send the message in this frame. Same as here, everything is clean, everything is tied up, but it's there is some sort of a chaotic feeling into it, something not so good about it, with those screamingly red chairs and everything so tidied. It's almost a bit of a crazy look. So in this frame we can see really strongly how good and well balanced environment uh, can show. Какво става, или? Ела, кажи. Работя, тате, работя. Да, работя. Да. Лампа. Хайде, после ще ги покажа всичките тези работи. Ходи навън. Да, да. Да, хайде, чао, чао. Чао. So while looking at this frame, it really shows order in one way. Everything is clean and tied up, but those chairs are standing so clearly out of the frame and making a sense of something disturbing, something chaotic. Really not a peaceful composition, and of course this is really well put up together, and probably this was the right way to send the message to a viewer. Really, composition has to speak for itself. It doesn't need further explanation or further going into detail. Really, when looking at a picture, you really have to relate to what you're seeing, and a good composition can really send a message to the viewer and to the people who are looking basically your artwork. Doing this, you really can benefit your designs by explaining your idea and important elements in your paintings and designs. Moving further, we can see another frame from a Akira Kurosawa movie where he's clearly alone against so many people, but elements of design are there. We have really strong silhouettes standing to each other. The lighting is really bright, the contrast is really strong. Really, there is a feeling of tension in this frame. Here from the movie 1917, which was a really beautiful picture, you can really see the imbalance here. The silhouettes are speaking of bad place. It's kind of a disturbing scenario here, and all those sharp elements and contrasts against the white overcast sky really speaks of dangerous location. Also, even looking at our character, we can clearly see that he is not well standing on his feet. He's in discomfort, so it really speaks of itself, what is the place and feeling there. You can see such order, and only this guy is looking up, so clearly he becomes our focal point, and the composition is making our eye go directly there. Same here, order and unity. Speaking of those, we can see that symmetry can cause a really different emotions in the viewer. He can cause calmness with this symmetry, even that this is a funeral. Something in some feel it feels peaceful. The guys are standing still against all those elements that are repeating in the background. But also it can cause discomfort. It can cause kind of a sad emotion. It can cause unity and good vibes, basically. It can cause something chaotic and suggesting that the location is some sort of bad place and disturbing place. Let's move to contrasts, where examples are as good as the previous ones. I really enjoyed gathering this mood board here. Those are all frames and from movies that I really find compelling and interesting to look at. After all, composition is suggesting visual interest in your painting, and contrast and all those elements we have here. Focusing on contrast here, emphasize on your focal point with contrast is a good point to make here. You can see that in every frame we have instant look at our focal point, and our elements are really carefully put together to make our eye go directly in one spot and not keep going around and wondering where to look at. Everything, everything is really put well together as a lighting. You can see that a common element is a person going against a dark background or a light background. Black against whites, black against whites, black against whites. Again, same thing here. Again, focusing on this such a contrast element here with one point perspective. I think that we talked in our previous week. Here again, symmetrical composition, but so different from each other. Suggest terrible place with all those crooked trees. It's clearly a place you don't want to be, and even in symmetrical composition we have an element that breaks a bit off this composition. Clearly focusing on the focal point here with so less lighting, so darkish location, but still our eye is controlled by the lighting here. Great frame from Blade Runner. You can see how well lighting is used here to focus on our main element here and her face with all those little lights here. We really emphasize on the main subject here. Again, such a strong subject, but we in such a vibrant color scheme, even that the whole and overall scene is really dark. We have such an element of contrast and one main element that is really brighter and well put together against everything else in the painting. Really well, good balance here, but we are all talking about focal point, and doing a focal point with a prop is actually a really interesting topic that popped up in my mind while looking at those frames. You can clearly see that this is from Lord of the Rings, and when you think about the ring, is a really strong element they cover in the story, but visually it's just a ring. Is nothing so much special about it. It's just a circular element, but when it's put in the composition, your eye directly goes to it. So such a strong element, and you can clearly see how this is emphasized here on those frames. The character looking at the ring directly. So many people gathered around, and just for this here, we don't even see the ring, but we know that it's present in the frame. This is something really cool thing when you are telling a story, or let's imagine the scenario that you are doing a storyboard for a video game trailer, or in-game cinematic, let's say, you probably have a prop in there, and when the prop is important, composition can be built around the importance of a single prop. So really much like this composition, it can be really, let's imagine a puzzle for a video game, and the puzzle could be here, and it will be such an important element. We can change basically those guys with statues, and maybe the guy will be really tiny, and this will have to be moved like a circular way, maybe like a puzzle from a God of War. You can really remake compositions in other frames. Element, strong element, even that is a religious element, this shouldn't be bothering us, because the frame is so really well put together. It's such a beautiful frame, and all those are created with elements of composition. Moving on the next one, I really probably can make a rest here and say that these are not elements of design. These are all elements that I really connect to compositing your images in a right way to be perceived by another person's eye, really placing those elements on a realistic proportions, or even uh, in a stylized way. It doesn't really matter, for both the same rules goes on, but if you put well up together those stuff, you really will be having a solid image. Going to motion and movement, which is really a big element in composition, especially in moving compositions, which basically are what we are aiming to work on. Movies and games are moving compositions, and we really have to think about it as concept artists, because after all, this is not just a still image. It will probably, somebody will be moving it further in production, and make it work in reality in the game engine or for a movie. So having emotion suggested in your paintings, you will really help yourself telling a good story in them. Movement and motion can be even suggested by graphical elements. As you can see, those I believe even the four of them are by Edgar Payne, which is a really good an amazing old master from the US, which was focusing mostly on landscape arts. He has an amazing book which is called, I believe, Composition in Landscape Painting by Edgar Payne. Uh, I'll drop a link maybe in the description. But what I'm going to emphasize here, that even motion can be present in brushstrokes, in placing your light, placing your darks, making really a pattern with it, which suggests movement. Even the scale here and the perspective, how it works with the clouds, you can see that they're going smaller into the background, closer to the horizon. They almost disappear in one color, but it still feels lively. It feels like it moves. Here the movement is suggested really by those masses. You see, this is a really good example to study on. Oops, Siri, come on. Uh, I have been doing studies of Edgar Payne's work before, and I think that my skills in painting overall benefited from those studies. You can see in all those artworks here, even this one, when there is not much movement, you can feel the wind. You can see in almost every painting every frame, excuse me, the movement feels present. Something is happening. A story is told in all those frames. Another example of Akira Kurosawa's work where it really should be a boring scenario, basically, like two people in some room, probably some public room. I don't know what is it, but probably a doctor, I think. I'm not sure what they are talking about. I don't really know even the context behind it. I haven't seen this movie, but it's the composition speaks by itself. Um, but what I was going to make a point on was that even this is such a boring scene to be looking from side to people talking. The movement is so much present. The camera is going from one side to other side. It flips. It's really a sense of movement here. Let's talk about patterns. Really cool thing to express your ideas and to have in your artworks, like some sketches even start only from using random patterns. So the pattern is a really good place to experiment with. You can see how much a pattern could suggest. It could suggest such a tension, but still it could even over manipulate it. It can be a really cool spot on for a frame that you're doing. You can see the pattern and order here. Still look from above. This is basically a pattern. You can see patterns how they suggest great contrast against such strong element as those red carpets. Patterns even in the lights, everything is in order, everything is working properly, it's lit right, beautiful frame. And I remember this guy just was running over like here, and it was such a strong element of this balance in the surroundings, everything so well put, and only this guy is going chaotic over it. This is from Grand Hotel Budapest, really an amazing movie. Great frame. This is from Ghost in the Shell, the motion picture. Really an amazing way to use this pattern here. It really puts some order in those details and chaotic situation that is going in the background and in the foreground with this cemetery. And again, our focal point is clearly stated here with strong reflections, some water, which is really only present as an element here, some strong reflections, strong silhouette against everything. You can see almost the same pattern here used in another sort of a way. Just an amazing concept from Alien, the original one. I mean the first one. Again, Blade Runner and those patterns of light. The genius Kubrick with his strong use of one-point perspective in his frames, but you can see clearly how well put this is together, and with this sort of a frame, you will probably be sure that the viewer will have you catch his attention here with this red suit, with this strong stripes going into the horizon, into the vanishing point. Is just an amazing frame that your eye directly sticks to it, and it's like, wow, what is happening here? Just an amazing one. Same here, Kubrick with his one-point perspective and the patterns. Such an inspiring frames. Let's take a breath here and look at proportions and how this is a really important element in every concept that we do. We should really be double checking if our scale is right in our paintings, if they're really speaking of each other's scale. So without it, you probably get some sort of weird disbalance between elements, and the viewer won't be able to really catch the dimensions of it. And maybe the environment that you are doing, be sure that everything is scale right. Like in this example that I really quickly did here, like when you're having a person, it clearly states how big a tree is, what is happening in the environment. So having an element as a silhouette of a person, or a person next to your designs, you really benefit from it. The viewer's mind and our minds are basically programmed to judge over a person in an image. So when somebody look at your artwork and see a person's silhouette, he'll write in a glimpse of a moment. He'll have an idea of how things are big in your artwork, or an element that is really close to what we see in our everyday life. Let's say here we surely know how big a car is, right? So having an element like a car, or an element like a column, trash, billboards, a person, of course, buttons, screens, and everything that when you drop inside of those frames and feel similar to what we see in our daily life, like a bottle, let's say, or I don't know, a book. You can really overuse those daily objects to suggest scale in your paintings. As you can see here, you surely know this tanker is an enormous boat. You can see so much detail in it, like big blank areas of metal, and so much dizzying detail here suggests that this boat is huge. Having elements here like cameras, my bad, radars and sonar objects, or some sort of a machinery. I'm not an expert of those, to be honest, but placing those similar to reality objects, you can really emphasize the people or the viewer's mind into how big your environment is, how the scale is working in your picture. You can see here when we're having this from Judge Dredd, I believe, really cool movie. The closest to 2021. I don't remember which was the year, but anyway, as a good example, you can see like a picture of a bird eye view of a city, which is somehow, you know, similar to what we see today, and more grounded to reality, and at the same time these ginormous buildings that doesn't feel like from today's environment, but those buildings on top, on the bottom, and the cars and everything really suggest that how big they are, and they look more grounded in the frame. Same here. Those back are so far away, but they still feel huge, you know. This is a matte painting, I believe, from the great Ghost in the Shell. Let's finish those with unity, and what I mean by this is as I suggested here, when something feels really strong altogether, and when something feels a bit of chaotic and not like it fits all together well, uh, like those both elements are good, but by its own. Sometimes you like to have a well balanced element and picture, but sometimes you really like to suggest some chaos or something that is distorting the image by a way that you emphasize on the subject more. Like here, breaking this symmetry, you can really emphasize on the person, as we talked earlier. Here you see such a unity and happiness, and everything is so cool and calm and comfy. Nothing is like super chaotic in terms of contrast and lighting and movement. Same here, everything balanced, warm tones, really nice, put all together, you feel comfy. And here you see how contrast is built here. Everything is kind of brownish with the soldiers and the ground and the building. They feel well all together, like they are part of this environment, their own environment. But this guy clearly states that he's not from this place, like an outsider, so creates an element of tension. Same here. This is another thing that I would love to tell here. This is from one of my most favorites, Kingdom of Heaven, and you can clearly see that the same character is put into discomfort and comfort with the chaotic elements around it. And here again we have strong contrast, but it feels peaceful. Again, two totally different compositions from totally different movies, and you can see even that he's disturbed, it feels all together. It's a well put image with all the colors matching up and everything is in order. But here those two characters are completely out of their environment, and the image clearly states it, as they are in the both sides of the frame, and all the chaos and dirt suggest that is really a disturbing place to be. Same here, we can have even order in chaotic frames. A lot of moving objects, a lot of dazzling stuff around, but you can see they have direction. Everything is directed to go into one direction to show movement, and it feels unified, has some sort of unity to it. But on the other side of the hand, we have really chaotic compositions, and everything is going nuts. You see so many elements, but still they are composite in a way that they bring your attention to a certain point in the image. Oh well, this was a really a beautiful trip into cinematography, and all those elements that bring all together a good composition and well balanced and well thought image. Uh, of course, this is something that will help you to present your artworks in a more professional way. You have the ability to really convey a certain message in your artworks and successfully send it and sell it to the viewer. No, it's well known that concept art is not only beautiful images, and it's not only about drawing compelling and interesting frames, but in many sorts of the way you really have to emphasize on compositing your elements well, So to be sure that your idea is really translated well and really in detail with the viewer, because sometimes when you are working, let's say, with a company and you're speaking through mail, let's say, and they don't have time to talk much with you, you probably will try to put up your artwork, put a little description what you did there, but really the description doesn't matter. When they open the artwork, they have to be like, aha, this image, let's say, really brings my attention to to the building here. It feels massive, it feels big. They really will understand better what you mean on the canvas. Let's imagine that this could be a really big fantasy fortress with dragons flying to it. You really have to explain how big the dragons are, how big this fortress is. Maybe those small elements here will be really small trees to emphasize on the huge element, which is clearly the building. This could be really a pyramid or something. You can see even the architecture is inspired in the movie by Zikurat, which is an ancient temple. So hope this overview of the main elements of composition has pretty much inspired you, and I would love seeing from you more studies over compositions that you enjoy. You really don't have to stick on those as they are my personal choices, but I hope that you suggest your own ideas and choices and what you really enjoy doing. Maybe you enjoy doing more stylized stuff. Sure, study animation, study cartoons, study game trailers. It's a lot of sources are out there, and it really depends on your personal tastes what images you're going to study on. Now I'm gonna take the break here and jump into a little demo for you, emphasizing on balance, rhythm, contrast, motion and movement, pattern, scale and proportion, and unity. I'll try to put up all those in a little demo for you and show you how those stuff can really put your artwork all together by using those elements.